Hi there, my name is Dr. Marcy Zwelling and I'm speaking to you from sunny Southern California. And I want to talk to you about osteoporosis. It is an up-and-coming subject because it seems everybody or their mother has osteoporosis. And let me tell you why. It's because it actually is a normal occurrence in people as they get older. This may seem politically incorrect, but we were not designed as human beings to live forever. We were generally designed to have children, and after we have children, theoretically, we should be done and go away. You know what they say about the Eskimos? They get on that glacier and they kind of glide off into the sunset. But that's not what happens today in America or anywhere else in the world. We live until we're 80 and 90 years old. And that is not what we were genetically prepared to do. Our bones were not genetically prepared to live that long, and they don't. So we need to help them live that long, or we're going to suffer osteoporosis. Now, osteoporosis is just a definition. It is not a disease. I want to emphasize it is not a disease, but it can prepare you. It can cause other medical problems if you're not careful. In fact, more people probably die of osteoporosis or a consequence of osteoporosis than most anything else, including heart disease. Osteoporosis means that the bone, the general good standard bone density or the makeup of bone, is becoming deficient. Bone is formed from calcium phosphate crystals, and they come together to make a very highly concrete constructed form. It's very specific, and when that form starts to break down a little bit, then the form gets weaker. You probably understand buildings a lot better. Buildings are built with big steel buttresses that go into the ground and they help hold the building up. And if that buttress, if that steel were to start to erode, then the building would not be as strong. And that's pretty much what happens to our bodies. Now, the bone is a metabolic organ. We are constantly making bone and we're constantly eating away at our bone. We have cells called osteoblasts that make bone, and we have cells called osteoclasts, and they kind of eat up the bone. And they're usually in some kind of a hemodynamic equilibrium. So you make it and you give it up, and you make it and you give it up, and everybody's happy. But as we get older, and specifically as women reach menopause, we actually give up more than we make. The drugs that you've heard about, the bisphosphonates, Fosamax, for instance, the most common bisphosphonate that's been used, and sometimes hormones that are used, actually help not by making more bone, but by actually decreasing the amount of bone that we lose. The whole purpose of treating osteoporosis is to maintain that structure, to maintain that density. Now, you can measure the density if you would like, and that is what happens when we measure density in bone density scans. But being the usually politically incorrect person, I will tell you that bone density scans are not the way to take care of osteoporosis. Osteoporosis should not be diagnosed after you have it. You should not ever hear that you've already lost that bone. You should hear how your doctor is going to prevent you from losing bone, because it can be prevented. The amount of bone that we have in our life is maximum probably at around the age of 20 or 30. It is maximized by teenagers who exercise a lot, and by exercise I mean that they actually pound on the pavement and they stimulate their bone density, and therefore they have a certain amount of bone density. As we go through life, that bone density decreases. At a certain point, as defined by the World Health Organization, you reach a point where you get osteoporosis. You never want to go there. It's a defined loss of bone density. You want to stay above that point, but more importantly, what you need to know is, am I on the curve? Where am I on the curve? Am I losing bone? And yes, we have a means of measuring that. You can ask your doctor to take a urine sample and measure what we call NTX. And these are collagen molecules that form in your urine. They are the byproduct of that part of the bone that's being lost. If you've got too much that you're losing, then your curve is going down this way and you're heading towards osteoporosis. You should stop the process. If you are not losing bone, then most likely you will be maintaining your bone and you're fine. How do you maintain bone? Several very important things. Among them, calcium, vitamin D, and exercise. Those are the three most important things. Calcium, there's a lot of agreement and disagreement about how much calcium you should use, and we'll talk about that in a future subject. But for the most part, if you eat foods that are high in calcium, and by the way, that is not milk. Broccoli actually has more calcium, but you can go to your computer and look up what has calcium in it. You should get most of your calcium from food. If you choose to take calcium by mouth, by a pill, that is fine, but you should probably do it with food. Secondly, vitamin D. Here in Southern California, theoretically, we should have plenty of vitamin D, but we don't. You might ask your doctor to measure your vitamin D level. You can take it in a pill. And be careful, because malabsorption can be a problem. Those people who have had bypass surgery on their intestines may have a problem with absorbing vitamin D. And finally, and most important, get off the couch and go and exercise. You need to do bone-stimulating exercises. Walking, running, bicycling, and swimming do not count. Vitamin D, calcium, and exercise will prevent osteoporosis. Check to see where you are on the curve, and don't wait until you need a bone density scan to define that you have osteoporosis. Prevent it. It is a preventable circumstance. Thank you. Whew.